Hi, everyone. I'm Amrita Tripathi, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this special series, Tap In with Amrita, a series of conversations with thought leaders, with CEOs and founders that I hope you find inspiring, that I hope you find thought provoking, and certainly we're going to be covering topics that we hope resonate with all of you as they do with us. So Tap In is a new initiative I've set up with my co-founder Preeta Atre, where we're looking at, focusing on women, looking at upskilling opportunities, mentorship, leadership as we soft launch. And the idea for our interviews and our content series really is to ensure we're sharing actionable tips, tangible takeaways, and not just the 30,000 foot view that everyone's gotten used to. So I am so delighted to actually be able to introduce our guest, Sairee Chahal, today, who many of you know. So I don't know, Sairee, if it's much of an introduction because you're already so well known in this space. Thank you so much for taking the time out today.
Thank you for inviting me, Amrita, and pleasure to be here. And I'm so excited about you building this. So, absolutely wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much. And we're standing on the shoulders of giants, Sairi. You've been such an inspiration in this space. As you know how strongly so many of us feel about this. And just a brief introduction. I've taken this from Sairi's lovely site, which I've seen for the first time. Actually, I've always been on Sheroes or the other sites, but your own site. Sairi is a serial entrepreneur, a mom, an angel investor, an evangelist for the women's internet. And this is way before this was a sort of buzzing topic. She's also a board member. She's the founder, CEO of Sheroes, an online ecosystem for women. And she's a founder of Mahila Money, which is a community neobank for women, as well as serving on the board of several foundations. So I guess first things first, Sairee, how many hours are in your day? Because you're packing a lot in.
I do, but I have to tell you, most people won't believe it. But the thing that I really optimize for is my sleep. Nobody knows that. I really sort of fight for my sleep, and uh, yeah, because you need to recharge every day to do everything that you want to do. And yeah, so, and of course there's a lot of help, Amrita. The truth is, it looks like a lot got done. I also want to say it didn't get done at the same time. So there's a lot of parallel processing, and there's a lot of timing things built into this.
No, for sure. And I think what's really interesting to see is also how it incrementally, it almost compounds, right? Because you've been working in this area for so long. Tell us a little bit, Sairi, about what you're, most excited about right now. What can you share with us, for example, about Mahila Money, which I know
Yeah.
you're very, very passionate about?
Yeah. So look, I think one, I've been a founder pretty much all my life. I've also been a founder who's a beneficiary of seeing the internet ecosystem grow in India. At the same time, I am, uh, somebody who sort of built companies, raised money, and of course, we saw how fewer women were our peers. We saw how fewer women were investors, and of course, we saw how little capital was available to women. So a lot of my focus at this point in my life is capital for women. And I think when I say capital for women, I literally mean entrepreneurs across the spectrum. So from literally your next door beauty parlor to your next door yoga studio to somebody who's building, let's say, a bake house or building the next kombucha brand. I think we want to make sure they have capital to build their business, and all capital is not venture. So Mahila Money is really a provider of that uh, ecosystem of capital, especially for aspiring women entrepreneurs. And of course, where I am in my life, I think the next thing for me is to pay it forward. I've been angel investing a little bit, and I'm now converting that into a fund, and that's really where uh, a lot of my focus today is. Uh, a lot of what we did in the past was around making sure women had access to opportunities, access to employment, access to entrepreneurship. But today, a lot of my time goes on thinking about how do we catalyze this with making capital available. So it doesn't matter whether you run a home-based business or you run an SMB or a factory or you're building a venture investable business. I really think that's where I want to invest my next 10, 20 years and build something of relevance.
That's so exciting to hear. Thank you for sharing that, Sairi. So, can I ask you a couple of things leading off from that? And then we have a few more general questions where we'll ask you your tips and tricks. In your own career, because you've certainly come to this stage, as you're saying, where you're looking at paying it forward. I want to ask you about this Saturdays with Sairi that I saw on your website. So I'd love to hear more about that. what
Yeah.
for you was kind of like this aha moment where you were like, I have to do this myself. I have to build this. Well, there must have been quite a few actually, but is there one moment you would pick out and share?
I think it kept recurring in my own life where I saw that I was invariably the only woman in the room, the only woman in the venture portfolio from funds we raised, the only woman maybe at an award show, the only woman in a boardroom. and and I think it just sort of became a function of saying, oh my god, like and of course in some ways you also recognize your privilege because you've reached there and you're in the room and you have a voice in the room. So to me, and this story has played out many times now, and Saturdays with Sari really happened to see what's the simplest thing I can start with. So it started by me, opening out my Saturday calendar, two women entrepreneurs on our network, the Sheroes network, my personal network, and uh, and you were just welcome to come and have chat. And I think there are a lot of people who have come by and we chatted, and some of those businesses are now, you can call them unicorns, and some of those businesses are real businesses with global customers and things like that. But a lot of entrepreneurial hustle is peer sharing and learning. Silicon Valley because people openly share and connect the dots for each other. So that's where a lot of this started. This was pre-COVID, almost 5-6 years ago. And I think what started happening over a period of time, I was meeting these entrepreneurs and I was talking to them, and I really liked what they were building. And of course I was myself building, so I guess time and money both were sort of constrained. And at some point I started feeling like a fraud to say, hey, how come I'm not writing them a check? So I started doing small angel checks, and then I started doing a little bit more by gathering a little more of angels and peers. So yeah, I guess it's literally step by step that sort of added up. But a lot of things are a function of uh, just being able to say, what can I do today? You don't have to do something big today. Can you do something small today? Like, can you just talk to one entrepreneur? I think that itself is it's good enough to start. And when you do that one entrepreneur, let's say 15 times a month, it'll compound. So compounding and consistencies is really something I've always believed in, but now I'm at a point where I'm seeing some of those outcomes play out.
That's fascinating because I did want to ask you a little bit about like what you see as your secret sauce. You've been a part of so many of these, like you said, boardroom meetings, deals, negotiations. Bringing multiple stakeholders together is often quite complicated, but leading, to an actionable result. So, would you say that looking at that collaborative way, looking at collaboratively is one of your, the tools in your toolkit, or what is your secret sauce?
Absolutely. I think if the size of the pie grows, then that's the right thing happening. If our pie is shrinking, our markets is shrinking, our ecosystem is shrinking, it's not going to work out for any of us. And I guess in some ways we're all a beneficiary of the pie growing in India. The ecosystem's grown many-fold, the access to capital has grown many-fold, there are more funds, more founders, and we still have so much headroom. And that's really something I've seen. The same thing happen with Sheroes, now with Mahila Money. And if it works for a cohort, it'll work for a lot more people. And our job is to make sure it becomes scalable. So scale has a lot of inherited value that we need to respect and we need to sort of build for. And that's something I always say to women entrepreneurs I meet, to say the effort in building something is the same. So you might as well try and fight for a bigger piece of the pie, bigger market share, because that's where a lot of value gets created. And I think we're seeing that play out in our ecosystem. And the other thing is just being consistent, Amrita. There's no short-term success. There is no overnight success. These things don't happen, because you did it for like, once in a way, or you did it when it worked for you and you didn't do it when it got harder. So I think that really matters. So irrespective of what's happened at Chiros or what's happened in my personal life, that calendar was always open. So, and in COVID it moved online, and in fact I actually started investing a lot more in COVID because of different other circumstances, and that was really sort of another lesson to say it doesn't matter if the person's not in the room, we should still do this, right? So Yeah, and I really think if you believe in something, then you have to play the long game. You have to make sure you have the clarity and commitment to go after it. And it's, I mean, there's so many examples of this, all long term companies. So whether it is from investing or from consumer internet, companies take a long time being built, and a lot of, if you want to create a lot of value, then you have to stay in the game longer. And that's really, I think, the superpower for most people who've been at it, whether it's filmmaking or whether it is anything that you're really going to do.
That's so interesting because we don't often, I think, talk about that. Like, the need for consistency. Like you said, no matter what's happening, if you believe in something, you need to back it through the good and the bad, at least as long as right, you're within those parameters, I suppose, of affordable loss and all those things. But the other thing, we don't always talk about is timing and, luck. So I want to ask you a couple of questions, like, again, taking a sort of like a step back. We are in a pretty difficult climate right now, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to so many people being laid off, of course, in tech, but otherwise as well. Do you have any suggestions, or would you have any tips for people who are, looking for a job in what's a very daunting atmosphere right now in India, of course, but even
And
otherwise?
absolutely. So the thing is, that the world of business is very cyclical. What goes up will come down. We've all seen this. They've seen uh, huge phases of hyper growth followed by absolute, uh, down markets. And personally, I believe that uh, some of these uh, some of these situations are great opportunities. So, for example, a lot of us have ideas of things we want to do, the entrepreneurial things we want to do, or side hustles or passion projects that we literally have been sleeping on because we were so busy doing things that we had signed up for. So look at a little bit of the opportunities that show up uh, along the way, but also I would say in some ways optimize for longevity, and by that I mean, first of all, your own health, right? Like if you are in top form, chances are you'll be able to sort of get through a lot of it. So I would never stop emphasizing self-care, get sleep, do your walks, runs, whatever works for you, because it's a investment you're making in yourself every day, and it doesn't cost you money. You don't need a job to sort of go for a walk or invest in yourself. And the second thing is just your personal overheads. I think what happened was uh, a lot of us sort of, when a lot of money comes in, we also spend a lot of money, which is fine. I mean, yes, of course, you earned it and you deserve like a good break. But when you span it over a period of time, you end up working super hard for some of these indulgences you made, or these overcommitments that you made, personal overcommitments in different forms, buying that third apartment and things like that. And I guess those are personal choices, but they also are, what you own owns you. And I think in some ways, if you can't have both, you can't have this, you can optimize for one kind of life, you can optimize for a life of huge personal satisfaction and building and sort of being able to fly with it, or being able to say, "Yeah, I'm going to do it differently." And these are choices, and I think these are hard personal questions to ask. At the same time, I would say uh, this is probably the best time to build, because building has gotten a lot more easier, right? Like you don't need a lot to get started. You have an idea, all you have to do is literally put your credit card on a web page and go up, as simple as that. And everything that you need is a tool to build a business, is available to you right at your disposal. So you can be in business literally in 48 hours, and your downside is so low, you have nothing to lose. So if you have an idea, go test it. And chances are you'll get feedback, you'll get your early adopters, and it's much easier being in business. At the same time, it's much harder scaling businesses now because of different reasons. Internet's gotten monopolized and things like that. And from a personal choices point of view, I do believe everyone of us has something that they really care for or they want to do, whether it's that film they want to make or that book they want to write or that, you know, restaurant they want to open, or something else, an app they want to ship. And I would say go for it, because the cost of doing some of these things is now a lot lower, like just in terms of, and distributions at your disposal. Your social media is your distribution, your LinkedIn is your distribution. Use it, because these tools were not available, and they're only getting cheaper as we go along.
Yeah.
And yeah, and if nothing else, you will at least know whether you really care about it long enough to stay in it, or it was just a fancy idea in your head. And
There are those as well. You're absolutely right. There are
yeah.
those. I do have to say, apart from that, of course, you have to make the ask. I've learned this so well from you as well. Like, don't be afraid to make the ask. Like, I've literally picked Sairee's brains on the Health Collective for the last 6 years, and she's been such a champion. I do want to ask you, Sairee. So you have the idea, like you're saying, test it out, take a bet on yourself. There's certain things here that you have to kind of unlearn, though, right? Because most of our conditioning is not, especially for women, I feel, women who are mid-career, let's say, you'll have everyone around you telling you it's a big risk, you're being very brave. But by brave, they sometimes mean stupid. You know what I mean? They're not really being like, they're not really sure. And I think sometimes you have to project that you're so certain when I don't think any founder in the early stage is.
Yeah, look, I think one of the best things in life is to develop a little bit of a thick skin. Like I was talking to somebody, and they said, like, my mentor told me, shed the baby fat and develop a thick skin. And I was like, that's really, it's relevant for all of us, because there's no way to try something without failing, and I do think as a society we do penalize women more for failures, and therefore a lot more women end up not taking that risk. But if you don't take that risk, you are missing on that big win, or you're probably going to live in a world of personal regret. That is sort of really hard. Alexa, keep quiet. Sorry, Alexa goes off on its own. Uh, so I think uh, and especially women, because obviously, and the other thing is, women have busier minds because they're also doing a lot of invisible work, uh, खाने में क्या बनेगा, to the family holiday, to what gifts will go this Diwali. Unfortunately, this work never gets accounted for, but women are always busy in their heads. They're always managing things. And that's, like, personally, that's the freedom I bought a lot, so one of the things I constantly negotiated along my life was reduce my personal overheads, things I don't want to be thinking about. So even when I had like a very small job and I could barely maybe pay for a cook, or a huge amount of help at home, that's where all my salary went, because otherwise I would have never had the time to do things I want to do, or to literally being able to invest in myself or go spend time in professional settings that I needed to do. And I think it's worth it. We need to make sure we are constantly investing in things that support us, and things that support us in the long term. And your support systems, your professional learnings, like, even though I've been a founder all my life, I think I've constantly been on, I did the Aspen Fellowship, I've constantly been in programs, I've sort of attended a lot of things that were relevant to my own personal learnings, whether it's investments or social sector. And I do see the value in being able to extract yourself from the situation, and literally go after some of these ideas that are important, right? Like, you don't want to miss out on the best for yourself. And as women, we do. There's just a lot of opinion everybody has about us, and I think at some point we have to ignore it.
Tune it out. It's one of the things we can learn to tune out. I love that. I also love what you said about what we own owns us. So I'm making notes as we go. My last question for you, Sairee, for the moment is, if is there a trend in the industry you're excited about, or is there something you're looking forward to in 2023?
I think a couple of things. So one is, of course, I am personally very excited about sustainability, climate. A lot of my own angel investments are in women building around sustainability and climate. A big theme, personal theme for me. Second is, I think, homegrown brands. A lot of women are building brands that have become part of our everyday lives. Some of these are big, some of these are small, whether they're microgreen brands, or the next kombucha brand, or the next sourdough brand. I think we're going to see a lot of that come in. And, you know, this is the segment that's also very relevant to the whole economic mainstreaming of women, but also small and medium businesses account for 70% of America GDP. So I think we want to see the same thing play out for us. And third is, we're going to see this age of digital entrepreneurship. There is uh, every person who turns entrepreneur will be digital first, which means that your overheads are low, your cost to going to market is low, and then of course you're able to experiment and iterate faster. And we are seeing a lot of that, and I'm seeing personally a lot of that play out in the work that we're doing. And yeah, and the other thing is small town India. It doesn't matter where you live now. You could be literally in backward beyond or in a remote state, in northeast or southern part of the country. It's an equal opportunity for everyone.
I always think it is a magic of the internet, as you've been saying. Like it's the digital opportunity that's equalized so many things for so many people. But Sairee, thank you so much for taking out the time today, and also thank you for always championing other women. I've seen you be so generous. Obviously, you've always passed the mic, whether it's with Sheroes, writing the checks now as well with Mahila for Money. Many of us in this space are really, really cheering you on from the sidelines, and hopefully, we'll get to see you in person really soon as well. Thank you.
Absolutely. All the best, Amrita. Really excited about this. And thank you. Thank you for everything.